It's the International Soccer Preview. We are Soccerphiles Canada. Welcome to Series 25, looking at the players of Euro 2024. This episode is looking at the players of Spain. Here we go. Hello and welcome to the International Soccer Preview by Soccerphiles Canada. I'm Kevin and this is Series 25 on the players of the 2024 Euro Cup. This episode covers Spain's players. We're doing this mediacast in two parts. Part one is a look at the candidates for the squad and their likelihood of making it. We examine the participation of the players in games over the recent period and categorize them into how likely they are to make the squad. We take a couple of other factors into account as well. Part two will come out when the squad lists are released and the final squad selected. At that time, we'll go back over our list and see who made it and who didn't. And we'll also cover things like injuries and surprise selections. So this episode has three parts. In section one, we'll look at some general information on the team. Section two, we'll cover the main candidates in each position and their likelihood of making the squad. And section three, we will summarize and conclude. Let's begin then, and we begin with some comments on the squad. We're going to talk about a few major retirements from the squad over the period, and that is Jordi Alba, the left back, with 93 caps and 9 goals. He's still playing club soccer, having been with Barcelona for 11 years since 2012 to 2023. He now moved to Inter Miami in the USA since 2023, playing with some Galactica there. He was part of the squad since the 2013 Confederations Cup and always selected for tournaments. And he last played in actually after World Cup 2022 in June 2023. He played the Nations Final League, the UEFA Nations League finals, which Spain won, and announced his retirement in August 2023. So Jordi Alba, the first of the retirements we'll look at here. Next, we have Sergi Busquets. He had 143 caps for the team and 2 goals and was there from 2009 to 2022. He also moved to Inter Miami in USA since 2023, and he was with Barcelona even longer than Alba for 15 years. His first tournament was the Confederations Cup in 2009, and he played in all tournaments since then. He last appeared for the national team in the 2022 World Cup, and his announcement of retirement came shortly after that tournament. Finally, we have Koke. Koke is actually just 32 years old, so not officially off the team, but hasn't played for Spain since the 2022 World Cup. He was with Spain from 2013 to 22 and had 70 caps and no goals. He is still playing club soccer. He's been with Atletico Madrid in Spain since 2009, so another a long term with his club there. His first tournament was the 2014 World Cup, and he was part of every squad since that time. That is it for major retirements. Club affiliations we'll talk a little bit about, but not a lot to say. Spain's players play for top clubs, most of them in Spain. The top clubs in Spain, or perhaps secondary clubs in Spain if they have a good season. And outside of Spain, probably about 25% of them, mostly with top clubs outside of Spain. So we have English clubs, Arsenal and Tottenham, but some smaller clubs like Wolverhampton and Brighton. And other clubs in Bayer Leverkusen and Leipzig in Germany. We said a couple from Inter Miami, but they are actually off the squad. The only other one I want to mention is Sergio Canales, who plays for Monterrey in Mexico, which is quite interesting. And it used to be that moving to the Middle East was kind of a retirement league for them, and certainly a death knell for a Spanish player's international career. That's no longer the case. We have Emerick Laporte moving to Al Nassr, but still on the squad. So that's a pretty high-paying job, so attractive. We have another with Al Rayyan in Mexico, in Qatar, but he hasn't been selected since moving there. Okay, that's a brief look at their club affiliations. So top club affiliations for Spain is the takeaway from that. Let's move on to talk about recent games. And we're examining the partition of players after the previous World Cup in December in 2022. So that would be basically from March 2023 to March 2024. Spain played 12 games over that period, including 2 UEFA Nations League finals games in June 2023, where we saw Alba and another veteran coming back to play in that game. Spain has been a part of every competition, but I want to say here that in our ongoing endeavor to make the podcast efficient, we're trying to keep it to about an hour. We are not going to go over the longer history of these players. They've been in tournaments, every tournament, plus some Confederation Cups as well over the past 10 to 15 years. When we did the podcast, the mediacast for the 2022 World Cup, that's on YouTube and on at captivate.com, a podcast. We did go into the deeper history of the Cup. It led to kind of a longer media cast there. But if you are interested in those details, especially details on the players' club history and on their tournament history, we urge you to go back. Most of the players with longer histories are still on the squad here, so those histories are there. For the sake of efficiency this time, though, we're just going to focus on the last 1 or 2 clubs they've played for and the last 2 tournaments, the 2020 Euro Cup and the 2022 World Cup. And we won't take it beyond there. Okay, let's talk about formations for Spain. Just give me a second. I must cough. I have coughed. The formations for Spain is actually fairly straightforward. It was 4-3-3 in all 4 games of the World Cup. And for about, for 8 of the 12 games after that, also a 4-3-3. The 4 times that it wasn't a 4-3-3, it was a 4-2-3-1. So still 4 at the back, and not a huge variation. But keep that in mind as we go through the players. I'll put it on the visual for the YouTube here. The usual formation then, 75% of the time, a 4-3-3, and that sometimes changes to a 4-2-3-1. Okay, and finally, as part of the general information, we look at their upcoming games. So they are playing 2 friendlies. 2 friendlies are scheduled for early June. So on June 5th, they play Andorra at home, and then June 8th, they play Northern Ireland at home. Okay, let's move on to section 2, the main part of the media cast here, and we begin with the manager or the manager situation. In the World Cup, the manager, I'm in the wrong spot here, so I just need to go back to my place. We had Luis Enrique guiding them through the 2022 World Cup. That didn't go that well. They only reached the round of 16 there, where they were knocked out on penalties by Morocco. Luis Enrique stepped down immediately after that. And, I'll just make a little comment on that because, going back, he also managed them through the 2020 Euro Cup, which I should have said. but stepped out after the World Cup. Perhaps his biggest mistake was making a lot of changes in Game 3 against Japan, which they lost. Perhaps took that game a little bit for granted. Nevertheless, they did pass the group stage and lost on penalties, so it wasn't a death blow or anything. But it's significant to this discussion because it's the theme of this mediacast that Spain makes a lot of changes. We're going to see a lot of players playing in the same position, and I wonder if it's to their benefit. Anyway, days after Luis Enrique stepped down, Luis de la Fuente stepped in, and that's no surprise. He was kind of ready and available because he was manager of the under-23 team at that time. So just kind of stepped up into the position. Perhaps he was intended to take over once Luis Enrique stepped down from the job. Anyway, he has been manager then of Spanish national team since 2022. That's his first national team, but he was manager of not only the under-23 national team in 2021, but the under-21 national team from 2018 to 2022. So managing both of them for part of that period, and then with the under-19 national team before that. So very familiar with these players, and he did manage a couple of club teams prior to 2013. So that is Luis de la Fuente taking them through the tournament here. And let's move on to the players and look at the goalkeepers. So we'll begin just by introducing the players by name and their likelihood of making it. And then we'll go back and give some more details on the main candidates. So we have Unai Simon as a definite candidate for goalkeeper, and also David Raya. And now we jump down to possible level, and we have Kepa Arrizabalaga and also Alex Ramiro. And off the squad, we have Robert Sanchez, seemingly off the squad. So we'll deal with him quickly here. We won't give any details on him. He last appeared for the national team in March 2023. So currently playing for Chelsea in England, but not getting onto the national team is Robert Sanchez. We also have another seemingly off the squad player, and that is Arnaud Tenas. He doesn't have any caps for the national team. He is on the roster for Paris Saint-Germain in France, so a big club there. But he is yet to earn his first cap for the national team, and his first and only appearance was on the bench in March of 2022. So it doesn't look like a candidate here. Let's go back and look at the candidates who are more viable, beginning with Unai Simon. So he has been, he is 26 years old and has been with Spain since 2020 with 39 caps. And he currently plays for Athletic Bilbao in Spain. That's his second stint with them, but that second stint has been since 2018. He was selected and a starter for both the 2020 and 2020 Euro Cup and 2022 World Cup. He hadn't played in any tournaments prior to that. And over the last period, so from the beginning of 2023, he started 8 of their 12 games. He was on the bench for 3, and maybe on the bench for 2 and injured for 2 matches. My numbers don't quite add up there, but started 8 of their games. David Raya is next. He has been with the team since, sorry, I'm going to try to go in a consistent order here, beginning with the age. David Raya is 28 years old and has been with Spain since 2022 with 4 caps and 0 goals. So he wasn't a consideration for Euro 2020, but he was on the roster for the World Cup in 2022, or on the bench, selected for the team and on the bench. So David Raya started 2 of their 12 games since the 2020 World Cup and was on the bench for 10 others. And through the magic of video editing, I went back and checked on Unai Emery there. He started 8 of their 12 games on the bench for 2 and injured for the first 2 matches in March 2023. Okay, let's move on to the possible candidates. So we have Kepa Arrizabalaga, and he is 29 years old and has been with the team since 2017, 13 caps and no goals. Currently plays for Chelsea in England, but loaned to Real Madrid in Spain since 2023. Now, probably a lot of these loans are over now, but I'm just going to act as if it's the end of the season and they're still there until and they're still there. So Kepa Arrizabalaga actually returned after a more than 2-year absence to start the first 2 of their remaining 12 games. So he came back in March of 2023 there. And he was on the bench for 6 and injured for the next 2, and then not selected for the last 2 matches. So kind of drifting off the team, as we'll see also when we get to the summary. So he was not part of the Euro 2020 or 2022 World Cup squads. He was part of the World Cup 2018, though, on the bench there. So Kepa Arrizabalaga, a possible candidate. Our other possible candidate is Alex Ramiro. If you're looking at the YouTube graphics here, you'll see his name is in light gray. That means he is has no tournament experience. If you see kind of darker gray, it usually means they're retired or haven't been on the squad for more than a year, and in black means they're kind of still active. So Alex Ramiro, 29 years old, but got his first cap recently in 2024, so a bit of a latecomer there. He does have 1 cap. He got his first appearance on the bench in November 2023 and didn't start any games, but was subbed in for 1 and on the bench for 3 others. So making a bid to get onto the team here is Alex Ramiro. Let's finish by summarizing the situation for goalkeepers. So Unai Simon started in the World Cup and has remained the starter, but he was injured for 2 games after the World Cup. In that case, it was Arrizabalaga who replaced him. However, when he was on the bench for 2 recent games, it was David Raya who replaced him, or at least for 1.5 of the games, and newcomer Alex Ramiro for the other half of the game. Arrizabalaga was injured for the November games, but he wasn't called up for the March 2024 matches. So it looks like Unai Simon is the starter, David Raya the first backup keeper, and unless they bring 4 keepers, which might happen, it looks like a kind of an even battle between Arrizabalaga and Alex Ramiro. All right, let's move on to the defense, and we begin with central defenders here. So we have a definite candidate in Robin Lenormand, and a likely candidate in Aymeric Laporte, and then several possible candidates: Inigo Martinez, Danny Vivian, Pau Cubarsí, and David Garcia. And then possible but unlikely is Pau Torres. And we'll deal with these players quickly as we go through, because we won't give too much information on them. Pau Torres was actually part of the squad for the last 2 tournaments, but he hasn't been selected for the last 7 games. He wasn't selected for 7 of the 12 games, including the last 3 matches that he was not selected for. So still a chance of making it, but at this point it doesn't look that promising. And then we have a couple of players who are off the squad. Nacho Fernandez actually returned after a 4.5-year absence in March 2023 and started one of their games. And was around for a little while, but he hasn't been selected for the last 8 matches. So looks to be off the team once again, Nacho Fernandez. Also, we have Eric Garcia, who seems to be off the team. He last appeared on the bench in the 2022 World Cup. So he was selected for both of the last tournaments, but now seems to be off the team. We'll maybe give a bit more information if they do make the final squad there. But for now, let's focus on the more likely candidates. We have definite candidate Robin Lenormand. So he is 27 years old, but just new to the team. So another latecomer there. Since 2023, he has 9 caps and 1 goal, and he plays for Real Sociedad in Spain since 2018. Lenormand, as the name suggests, was born in France and got his first cap in June of 2023. And then he started 9 of their 10 games and was on the bench for the one other. So suddenly coming into the squad, Robin Lenormand. Also born in France is our likely candidate, Aymeric Laporte. He is 30 years old and has been in Spain since 2021. He has 28 caps and 1 goal. So yet another latecomer to the team here. He played for Manchester City from 2018 to 2023, but as we said in section 1 there, he's moved to Al Nassr in Saudi Arabia since 2023, but nevertheless still playing for the national team. He was a starter in the last 2 tournaments. I'll just say that's the Euro 2020 and World Cup 2022, and has since started 9 of their 12 games on the bench for 1 and not selected for 2 others. I believe that was the November games. Okay, so Aymeric Laporte, a likely candidate here, almost definite, I would say. Now we move on to the first of our 4 possible candidates, Inigo Martinez. He's 33 years old and has been with the team since 2013, but just 21 caps and 1 goal in that time and never called up to a tournament. So struggling to get on the team. Inigo Martinez, he plays for Barcelona in Spain since 2023 and was with Athletic Bilbao in Spain for 5 years prior to that. So as I said, never called up for a tournament, but he kind of remains in and around the squad. He started 2 of their 12 games since the World Cup and was on the bench for 2, injured for 2, but not selected for 6 matches, including the last 2. So a possible candidate in Inigo Martinez. Next, we have Danny Vivian. 24 years old, but brand new to the squad since 2024 with 1 cap and no goals. He plays for Athletic Bilbao in Spain since 2020 and got his first cap just recently in March of 2024, starting 1 of the 2 games there and on the bench for the other. So Danny Vivian, another possible candidate. The next one is Pau Cubarsí. Interesting because he's just 17 years old and he also got his first cap in March. Didn't start any of the games, but was subbed in for both of them. So he has 2 caps and no goals since 2024. And he has played for Barcelona in Spain since 2024 and was with the Barcelona Youth Club system, came up through that system. Our final possible candidate is David Garcia. He's 30 years old, but a newcomer also, another latecomer since 2023, and he has 3 caps and no goals. He plays for Osasuna in Spain since 2014 and got his first cap in March of 2023. He started 1 of their games and subbed in for 3. But I'll just stop right there and say he's an injury concern and probably not going to make it to the squad. He got his hamstring injury in late April and is expected back on June 23rd, which would be 9 days after the tournament began. So maybe a possibility of him recovering more quickly, but even at that, he is just a possible candidate among many candidates here. Okay, that is all of the candidates. So let's summarize the position. In the World Cup, it was Aymeric Laporte and defensive midfielder Rodri, who we will meet soon, playing all 4 games, except for game 3, where Pau Torres replaced Laporte. Bit of experimentation after the Cup under the new manager, but it did settle down into Laporte and Lenormand as the central pairing. As we saw, it's always a two-man central defence for Spain. A bit more experimentation towards the end in the autumn of 2023, but again, it was Laporte and Lenormand in the last game. In the experimentation, it was only Inigo Martinez who saw more than one start, and he just 2 starts. Okay, let's move on to the left back position and begin by introducing the candidates. So we have no definite candidates, but at the likely level, we have Alejandro Grimaldo, and then at the possible level, we have Jose Gaya and Alejandro Balde. And we have, we have a couple more too. Marc Cucurella and Fran Garcia. 4 possible candidates here as well. And then one possible but unlikely, Alfonso Pedraza, who I'll deal with quickly. Here he got his first cap in October 2023 and was subbed in for 1, injured for 1, and not selected for 3 others. So just 1 cap to him and hasn't appeared other than that. We also have a player who seems to be off the team, Juan Burnett. He was around for a few years since 2014 and popped up again. But it was just a report on one of the sources I have that said he was called up for the 2023 Nations League finals in June, but reported in as injured. So he plays for Paris Saint-Germain in France. So has kind of always been around the Spanish national team for a long time, but never really inserted himself, and now seems off the squad again. And finally, we have Jordi Alba, who we talked about as a retired player. He did play the Nations League final games in June 2023, but even then kind of brought back in for that. So let's look at the main candidates and go back to our likely candidate, Alejandro Grimaldo. So he is 28 years old, another latecomer for the team since 2023, with just 2 caps. And he plays for Bayer Leverkusen in Germany since 2023 and Benfica in Portugal for 7 years before that. Got his first cap in November 2023 and started 2 of the remaining 4 games and was on the bench for 2 others. So perhaps a bit generous to say that he's a likely candidate, but you'll see why shortly. Next, we have Jose Luis Gaya. And we won't dwell on him too much because he is out with an injury and not expected back for the Cup, not expected to recover until September 2024, actually. So Gaya is 29 years old with 22 caps and 3 goals since 2018 and is a long-time member of Valencia in Spain. So he was selected for the Euro 2020, but not the World Cup. In fact, he was injured for that with an ankle injury. So now it'll be 2 cups in a row. Over the period, though, he was the most starting of the left backs. He started 4 of their 12 games and was on the bench for 1. And injured for 2 and not selected for 5 matches. So Gaya would have been a possible candidate, but now seems to be out of the running. Next, also injured, is Alejandro Balde. We saw him starting a game in the World Cup there. He's just 20 years old and has been with the team since 2022 with 7 caps. He plays for Barcelona in Spain. And selected for the World Cup there. He since started 2 games and subbed in for 1 and was on the bench for 1. But he was out with 3 separate injuries for 5 games, including the last 2 matches. So Alejandro Balde out with a tendon rupture since February and an unknown return date for him. So 2 possible candidates are injured. We'll have to report on Balde closer to the Cup, though, because his return date is unknown. Our third possible candidate, Mark Cucurella, is 25 years old and has been with the team since 2021, but only one cap in that time. He plays for Chelsea in England. Never selected for the tournaments, and actually was off the team for 2.5 years prior to his return in March 2024. And he started one of the remaining 2 games and was on the bench for one other. So probably brought back in because of these injuries to players, or at least that was part of the reason. Finally, we have Fran Garcia. He's 24 years old and has been with Spain since 2023, 2 caps and no goals. And he plays for Real Madrid in Spain since 2023, and Rayo Vallecano before that. He got his first appearance in June 2023, so not brought in to cover these injuries, but started one of their remaining 10 games, subbed in for 1 and on the bench for 2, but not selected for 6 matches, including the last 4. So actually kind of the opposite of Cucurella. Even with the injuries, he wasn't recalled. All right, so that's a lot of candidates. 2 of them injured. We had Jordi Alba. This is a summary of the position of left back. Jordi Alba in 3 games of the World Cup, but Alejandro Balde in game 3 against Japan. Gaia played the most, but that's only 4 games of the 12. 4 players came in for a single appearance, including Balde. As we said, Jordi Alba returned for the 2 Nations League final games in June 2023. The only other one to start twice was Grimaldo, and that was in 2 of the last 4 games. So it's very unsettled here, and especially now that Gaia and Balde are out injured. Grimaldo seems the most possible, which is why we put him at the likely level. But of course, there are other candidates, and at least one of them will, one of these possible candidates will make it to the squad, at least on the bench. Okay, right backs, let's begin. So you can see a lot of candidates for the position. That's going to continue all the way through. Right backs, we have a definite candidate in Dani Carvajal, and a possible candidate in Jesus Navas, and in Pedro Porro. We have a possible but unlikely candidate in Cesar Azpilicueta. And the reason he is possible but unlikely, despite being on all tournament squads since 2013, he was even actually selected for the preliminary squad for the 2010 World Cup, but he hasn't started any games since the World Cup. He was on the bench for 2, but not selected for 10 others, including the last 6 matches. So doesn't seem a likely candidate here. Let's go back to the beginning and give more details on the ones we probably will see. Dani Carvajal, the definite candidate, is 34 years old, and he's been with Spain since 2014 and has 43 caps and no goals. So he plays for Real Madrid in Spain and has done so since 2013. And actually even longer before that. He had a short stint with Bayer Leverkusen in Germany in 2012 and 13. He was part of the World Cup squad in 2018 and 22, but not selected for the squad for Euro 2020. I believe injury played a role in that. Dani Carvajal has since started 7 of their 12 games and subbed in for 3 and on the bench for 2. So a little more stable than the left back position. Dani Carvajal kind of holding down the right back position. Jesus Navas, our first possible candidate, is actually coded as a right midfielder, but since his only starts were as a right back during this period, we're covering him here. And he was part of tournaments from the World Cup 2010 to the Confederations Cup in 2013, but hasn't made a tournament since then. And he returned after a more than 2.5 year absence in June of 2023 and started 3 of their remaining 10 games, and 2 of those were the Nations League finals games. He was also subbed in for 2 and on the bench for 3, and injured for 2 matches. So consistently called up and might be a candidate here. He's 38 years old. He might be a candidate, except he suffered a hamstring injury in late May, and he had been out with one also in December of 2022, and is an unknown return date. So he seems to be injured, and at 38 years old, probably not going to make it to the squad, I would guess. Much more likely, though, is Pedro Porro. Pedro Porro is 24 years old and has been with Spain since 2021, but only 3 caps so far. He plays for Tottenham in England since 2023 and Sporting Lisbon in Portugal before that. And he was also with Manchester City from 2019 to 2022, but loaned out for most of that time. So not part of any tournament so far. He actually returned, was off the squad for 1.5 years and returned in March 2023, started 2 of their games over the period, on the bench for 2, and not selected for 8 matches, but he was called up for the last 2 matches. So, and his form has been good for Tottenham. So Pedro Porro, a possible candidate, almost likely given the lack of competition in this position here, because he's the last of our candidates. So let's summarize the position. It was actually Cesar Azpilicueta for the first 2 games of the Cup, Dani Carvajal for game 3, which was something of a B-team game. I wouldn't call it a B-team game, but they did make a lot of changes for it. And then in game 4, it was Llorente, who I believe is a forward, so a bit of an odd choice there. Anyway, Carvajal started after the Cup, and Porro got a game. And then we saw Jesus Navas returning for the Nations League games in June. But since then, it has been Dani Carvajal for 6 of the 8 games, with Porro and Navas each starting 1 game. So it looks like Dani Carvajal here. And since Navas is likely going to be out injured, I'm guessing Porro will be the backup. That's it for defenders, and now we move on to the midfield. And we've kind of divided the midfield into defensive and attacking. So we'll begin with defensive midfielders, and here we have a player we've mentioned, Rodri, as a definite candidate, and we have Martin Zubimendi, a likely candidate, and we mentioned the retirement of Sergi Busquets here, so he is actually retired. We also have a player seemingly off the squad. Well, I won't say seemingly off the squad. I'll put him as retired because he's been off the squad for so long. It's Hugo Guillamon. He was actually selected for the World Cup in 2022, but that was his last appearance for the squad. Okay, I guess I put him as seemingly off the squad because he's young enough that he could make a comeback. Hugo Guillamon. Okay, so not so many candidates for defensive midfield. I want you to keep in mind that usually it's a 4-3-3, so that would be 1 defensive midfielder, but with 2 quite defensive left and right midfielders, and then sometimes a 4-2-1-3. A 4-2-3-1 with 2 defensive midfielders. In the World Cup, it was Sergi Busquets in all 4 games, and that's why Rodri was playing as a central defender. I guess they wanted both on the field, but Busquets had the seniority and was selected. However, after the World Cup, Busquets retired and Rodri stepped into the position and is usually there. Um, Oh, hang on. I'm kind of giving a summary rather than introducing Rodri. So let me go back and do what I'm supposed to do. Okay, Rodri is 27 years old. He's been with Spain since 2018 and has 49 caps and 3 goals. He's been with Manchester City in England since 2019, Atletico Madrid before that. He was part of the Euro 2020 and World Cup 2022 squads. They wanted him as a starter for the World Cup in 2022, so he started out of position. He has since started in position in 10 of the last 12 games, on the bench for one and not selected for one. And Rodri, a definite candidate then. Next, we have Martin Zubamendi, a likely candidate. He is 25 years old and joined Spain in 2021 with 5 caps and no goals. He plays for Real Sociedad in Spain since 2019 and it has not been part of any tournaments. He got his first cap in a single appearance in 2021, but then was off the team for more than 2.5 years, coming back in March 2023. But then, from then, playing 2 of their remaining games, subbing in for 2, and on the bench for all 8 others. That's why we have him as a likely candidate. However, he has been out with a hamstring injury since early May and is an unknown return date. So he's kind of the backup for Rodri, as we'll see in the summary. So a bit of a loss for them there, since they don't have any other candidates in this position. Or, you know, perhaps Hugo Guillamon has an open door to get in through with Zubamendi's injury. So let's summarize the position, which I started to do before. So Busquets in all 4 games of the Cup, Rodri stepping into the position after that. Alongside Rodri, when it was a 4-2-3-1, it was Marino and Ruiz. We're going to meet those players right away here. They accompanied him. Zubamendi was never on the field with Rodri, but he did replace him in the 2 games that Rodri missed. So he was the backup. Okay, let's move to central midfielders here. And you'll notice that we are separating them. We usually combine them, but there is a bit of a division among the Spanish players here. They play different positions. So we have a definite candidate in Gavi. We have another definite candidate in the player I just mentioned, Mikel Merino. And Fabian Ruiz, who I also mentioned, is a likely candidate. And then we have one player seemingly off the squad. That's Alex Garcia. Sorry, possible but unlikely. So Alex Garcia got his first cap in November 2023, didn't start any games. He was subbed in for 1 and on the bench for 1. So those are the 2 November games, but then not recalled in March 2024. So he looked like he was kind of given a trial and didn't pass. The player I mentioned before, surprised that he was right back in 1 game, was Marcos Llorente. In fact, he's a central midfielder who now seems to be off the squad. Last played for the national team in the 2022 World Cup, so we won't go into further detail on him. And the other one is Carlos Soler, also last played in the 2022 World Cup. So he also seems to be off the squad. So let's go back again. We'll kind of reintroduce them if they are selected, those players. And look at Gavi. Gavi. So Gavi, really, I should put him as a versatile midfielder because we're going to see he plays all over the place. But he is coded as a central midfielder. And his only tournament was he is 19 years old, Gavi. and but has been with the team since 2021 and has amassed 27 caps and 5 goals. Wow. He's played for Barcelona in Spain since 2021. So he was part of the World Cup. He was a starter even in the World Cup, and since then has started 9 of their 12 games and subbed in for 1. But he was injured for the last 2 matches, so out with a cruciate ligament injury since November 2023 and an unknown return date. So it looks like that injury was long enough ago that he could recover, but he hasn't played this in the spring of this season. So even if he does recover, fitness would be an issue for him. So we consider him unlikely on the basis of injury. Our other definite candidate is Mikel Moreno, and he's 27 years old and been with Spain since 2020 with 20 caps and 1 goal. Yet another player with Real Sociedad in Spain since 2018. He had a short stint with Newcastle and Borussia Dortmund, both of those teams before that. So he hasn't been a part of any tournament, despite being on the team since 2020. In fact, he was off the team for 16 months and he returned in March 2023, but then started 7 of their remaining 12 games. And he was subbed in for 2 and on the bench for 3 others. So he's always selected since his return. And we're going to talk about what position he plays, but we saw a little bit in the previous section. Fabian Ruiz is 28 years old and he's been with Spain since 2019, 22 caps and 1 goal, and he plays for Paris Saint-Germain in France since 2022 and Napoli in Italy before that. And he was part of the 2022 Euro Cup, substituted into 3 games there, but not selected for the 2022 World Cup. So was off the team and actually returned after a 20-month absence, so almost 2 years, in March of 2023, and went on to start 5 of their remaining 12 games, subbed in for 2 and on the bench for 5 others. So like Mikel Moreno, he was always called up, although he didn't start quite as many as Marino. Okay, and that is it for the introduction. So let's go back and look at the position here. So we saw when it was a 4-3-3, when it was a 4-2-3-1 formation, we saw that both Marino and Ruiz joined Rodri as defensive midfielder. Otherwise, in the 4-3-3 formation, they usually played as left and right midfielders. I think it was Marino more on the left and Ruiz on the right, although they did switch around a bit, I think. Gavi, who has been an attacking midfielder in the World Cup and in other games, has joined them in this rotation to a degree. So sometimes Gavi is part of that defensive midfield rotation and sometimes an attacking midfielder. All right, there we have it. So actually the center of the midfield and the central defense fairly stable. It's more the outside positions where we see a lot of variety, and we're going to see that as we move on here to attacking midfielders. We're going to begin with the kind of upper left quadrant of the field, left attacking. So that could be an attacking winger, a left attacking midfielder, or a left forward, which we do see quite a bit for Spain in that 4-3-3 formation. Either way, it's these players who we're looking at now. So we have a likely candidate in Mikel Oyarzabal and a possible candidate in Dani Olmo, and several players seemingly off the squad. So one of them, possible but unlikely, I should say. One of them is Ansu Fati. So I'll just quickly talk about him. He was selected for the World Cup and started one of their 12 games since the World Cup. Subbed in for 2 and on the bench for 1, but not selected for 8 matches, including the last 4. So drifting off the team, and Sufari, although he's very young, and we'll probably see him again. Also possible, but unlikely, Rodrigo Riquelme, I should say. There is another Rodrigo coming up. Riquelme got his first cap in November 2021, and that may be November 2023, I should say, and started none of the remaining 4 games, but was subbed in for 2, then not selected for the last 2 matches. So like the player we saw before, just kind of making an appearance in November and seemed to not get his way into the squad. Finally, we have Brian Zaragoza in this possible but unlikely left winger. He got his first cap in October 2023, didn't start any games, but subbed in for 1 and was on the bench for 1, then not selected for the last 4 matches. So again, kind of popping his head into the team, but not seemingly getting through the door. Okay, let's summarize the position of left attacking midfielder, or the left attacking player. As we said, mostly it's a left forward in the 4-3-3, but it's a left attacking midfielder when it's a 4-2-3-1. It was Dani Olmo in all 4 games of the Cup, but after that it was almost a different player every time. But in the end, it was Oyarzabal here, and then the right winger Williams, who we'll meet soon. Each of those started 3 of the 12 games. And in the end, the situation settled to those 2 exchanging the position, each playing twice over the last 4 games. Some of the other players who we saw in this position were Fati and Olmo, who are both listed here. Also, our versatile midfielder Gavi. They all started once, and then right winger Pino, who we'll meet soon, started twice. So they do kind of switch around up here, as we're going to see. But it does look like Mikel Oyarzabal, though I wouldn't call him a definite starter over here. Let's move on to some of the right attacking players. So same situation over here, usually a right forward and sometimes a right attacking midfielder. And our candidates are Nico Williams, a definite candidate, who we just mentioned. Lamine Yamal, an interesting case here as a likely candidate. And Yeremy Pino, who we just mentioned as a possible candidate. And Ferran Torres as a possible candidate, and Pablo Sarabia also possible. And I have the wrong color for him because he was off the team for a while, so I had him as retired, but he's back, baby. Pablo Sarabia. You'll see, and that's all of our candidates, so we can start talking about them. Nico Williams has been, or is 21 years old, been with Spain since 2022, 13 caps and 2 goals, and he was selected for the World Cup there, and has since started 3 of their 12 games, subbed in for 3 and on the bench for 2, and he was out with 2 separate injuries for 4 other games, but he is fit to play here for this tournament. So we did see him line up on the left side a couple of times. He is coded as a right winger, though, even though he plays on the left a bit more. Okay, the next one is the likely candidate, Lamine Yamal. I'm excited to see him. He's 16 years old and has been with Spain since 2023 already, with 6 caps and 2 goals. So he's another from the Barcelona system, recently moving up to the senior team. So he scored in his first, he got his first cap in September 2023 and started 3 of their remaining 8 games, subbed in for 3, and then was injured for 2 matches, but he is recovered from that injury. So Lamine Yamal, an exciting likely candidate here. Our next player is Jeremy Pino. He's also young, 21 years old. Since 2021 he's been with Spain, 12 caps and 2 goals, and he is with Villarreal in Spain since 2020. And Jeremy Pino was selected for the World Cup in 2022, even though he was on the bench the whole time, and he started 3 of their 12 games since, as well as subbing in for 2. But he was injured for the last 4, and he is out with a cruciate ligament injury, which he got surgery on, out since November 2023, and an unknown return date. So very much like Gavi, that even though he may be recovering from the injury here after 7 months, he hasn't played for his team, so fitness would make him an unlikely candidate at this point. So injuries ravaging Spain here, and Jeremy Pino seems to be out. Ferran Torres is surprisingly only a possible candidate here. He's 24 years old and has been with Spain since 2020, with 40 caps and 18 goals. So he is with Barcelona in Spain. He was with Manchester City from 2020 to 2022 before returning to Spain, and with Valencia before that. And he was part of Euro 2020 and World Cup 2022, a starting player in both of those tournaments. So what has gone wrong for Ferran Torres that he's only a possible candidate? Well, he's only started 3 of their 12 games since the World Cup. He was subbed in for 2, and he was injured for the last 2 in March, but is recovered from that. But not selected for 5 matches. However, those were the first 5 matches, so it looks like he may be coming back into the team, and Ferran Torres, but we have to have him as just a possible candidate at this point. And finally, Pablo Sarabia, surprisingly, well, not too surprisingly, but making a comeback to the team. He's 32 years old and has been with Spain since 2019. But has never fully gotten onto the squad. He has 27 caps and 9 goals, and plays for Wolverhampton in English since 2023. He was with Paris Saint-Germain. I never know how to say that name. I don't know whether to give it a French pronunciation, which sounds pretentious, Paris Saint-Germain, or like that, or whether I should just say it like a blunt English person, a Paris Saint-Germain. I'm at a bit of a loss there. Anyway, he was with that club from 2019 to 2023, loaned to Sporting Lisbon during that time. And people may be mad that I say he's not fully integrated into the squad. He was selected for the last 2 tournaments, and he was a substitute in those tournaments, but he did gain a starting position in Euro 2020, but definitely just a sub in 2022. So he returned. He was off the squad for 15 months, basically after the World Cup, but he returned in March 2024 and started one of those 2 games and was on the bench for the last match. So making a comeback is Pablo Sarabia, and I don't know, I feel embarrassed about my "he's back baby" comment, because it's really not like me. Okay, let's look at then the summary of this situation. We have 1 definite, 1 likely, 1 injured, and 2 possible candidates. It was Ferran Torres for 3 games of the World Cup, but Nico Williams for game 3, where they made a lot of changes against Japan. After that, it's been a dazzling variety, and so I'll kind of summarize it for you. The youngster Yamal and Ferran Torres each played 3 games. The forward, Marco Asensio, played 2, and then it was Olmo, Pino, Sarabia, and the forward Rodrigo, each playing once. So make of that what you will. It looks like Yamal and Torres are the main candidates here, but we also have players coming over from the other side to play, so a bit up in the air there. Now we look at central attacking midfielders. Not as many candidates here, because if you think about the formations, the 4-3-3 doesn't have a central attacking midfielder, but the 4-2-3-1 does. And as we saw, about 25% of the games, they've used a 4-2-3-1, so in about 4 games. Okay, so we have a likely candidate in Oyhan Sanset, and we have a possible candidate in Alex Baena, and then Sergio Canales, possible but unlikely, so I'll deal with him here. He returned after more than 2-year absence in June 2023 and was subbed in for a game and on the bench for a game, but he was injured for 4 and not selected for 4. But seems to have returned actually for the Nations League games, as we saw a couple of other players did. Anyway, Sergio Canales, just 22 years old there, so definitely a chance of making it back onto the squad, but hasn't really inserted himself into the team. Finally, we have Koke, who is not retired, but has not been on the squad since the World Cup in 2022. So we'll leave it at that. He's 32 years old, I think, so young enough to come back. And younger still is Pedri. He is just 22 years old, but he also has not been seen since the 2022 World Cup. So a bit of a surprise there, because he was a starter both in that and in Euro 2020 Cup. So maybe Spanish fans will know more what the situation is with him. But on the surface, it's definitely a surprise to not see Pedri in the mix here. Let's go back and look at the candidates. And Oyhan Sanset is 24 years old, but got his first cap in 2023. So 4 caps and 1 goal for him. He's with Athletic Bilbao in Spain since 2019. He got his first cap in October 2023, so didn't start any of the remaining 6 games, but was subbed in for 4 of them and on the bench for 2. So quickly inserting himself into the squad. However, he is out with a hamstring injury since early May. Actually, it was just the last game of the season where he was listed as injured. No, he was injured. He was listed as injured for 4 games before that. And then in the last game of the season, he was listed as with a fever. So I don't know if that means he's recovered from the hamstring injury. It's a bit unclear. So we have to see this as an unknown return date. He may be off the squad. What was written there suggested that he was over the hamstring injury, but that's usually a longer injury. I'm going to consider him off the squad, but look for more information when we do part 2, and we'll update it there. Meanwhile, we next have Alex Baena, and he's been with the team since 2023 with 2 caps and 1 goal. He's 23 years old and plays for Villarreal in Spain since 2020. He got his first appearance on the bench in September 2023 and didn't start any, but was subbed in for 2 and on the bench for 2, but not selected for 4 matches, including the last 2. No, he was called up for the last 2. He wasn't selected for 4 matches, but he was called up for the last 2 matches. So Alex Baena, a possible candidate here. And okay, that's it for central attacking. Let's just summarize the position. So again, only used in a quarter of the games. In the first two times it was used, it was the versatile midfielder Gavi, and then closer to current times, it was used twice again, and it was forward Gerard Moreno playing it once, and then left winger Danny Olmo the other time in that position. Those were the two March 2024 games. So make of that what you will, because we're not even sure they'll use that formation. Okay, so we move on to the forward line. We don't have any players coded as secondary strikers, and really we have surprisingly few players coded as forwards here. So we have a definite candidate in Alvaro Morata. He's the captain of the team now. And we have a likely candidate in Joselu. And then we have a couple of possible candidates in Marco Asensio, and in Gerard Moreno, both of which we've mentioned already. And then a couple of players seemingly off the squad who I will go over quickly. So first one is Iago Aspas, last appeared for the team in March 2023. And Borja Iglesias, also last appearing in March 2023, and Rodrigo Moreno, not appearing for the last 8 matches. So and Abel Ruiz returned after a 2-year absence in September 2023. And then was on the bench for just 1 game and disappeared again for the last 6 matches. So Abel Ruiz. So none of those players seem close to making the squad here. Among them, probably Rodrigo Moreno would be the most likely to make a comeback. But we won't spend time on those. But those players that look a bit more likely to make the team. So definitely making the team, we think, is Alvaro Morata. He's 31 years old now and captain of the team, and has been with Spain since 2014. 71 caps and 34 goals, an impressive scoring record, almost 50% there, which is very high. Alvaro Morata is with its 3rd stint with Atletico Madrid since 2020, but he was loaned to Juventus for a couple of years there, and was with Chelsea in England from 2017 to 20, but loaned back to Atletico Madrid at the end of that period. So an Atletico Madrid player, even actually since his first youth club in Spain in 2005. He's been with the team tournament-wise since the 2016 Euro Cup, and has participated in all of the tournaments except the World Cup 2018, there where he was not selected. And since the World Cup in 2022, he started 9 of their 12 games. So surprisingly, the forward position is one of the most consistent on the team. He was also subbed in for 1 and then on the bench for 2 others. So always selected and usually starting Alvaro Morata. Backing him up in recent times is Joselu, who has no tournament experience. He is 34 years old, but got his first cap in 2023, but has now 10 caps and 5 goals. So percentage-wise, he's actually beating Morata. He is at 50%. He plays for Espanyol in Spain, but had a loan spell with Real Madrid. And Joselu was born in Germany. So he got his first cap in March of 2023, started 3 of their remaining 12 games and subbed in for 7, and was on the bench for the 2 others. So always selected is Joselu, surprisingly, given that he's 34 years old. All right, let's look at the first of our 2 possible candidates, Marco Asensio. So he is 28 years old and has been with Spain since 2016, and he has 38 caps and 2 goals. And he plays for, Paris Saint-Germain in France since 2023, and was with Real Madrid for 9 years before that. So Marco Asensio was part of the World Cup in 2018 and 2022, but not part of the Euro Cup in 2020. Since the World Cup in 2022, he started 2 of their 12 games and subbed in for 1. He was out with 2 separate injuries for the last 7, although he is recovered now, and he was not selected for the first 2 matches there. So he's been called up, really not called up due to injury rather than non-selection. So Marco Asensio, currently a possible candidate. And finally, Gerard Moreno, he is 32 years old and has been with Spain since 2019, 18 caps and 5 goals in that time, and currently in his second stint with Villarreal in Spain since 2018. He was part of the Euro Cup squad in 2020, but not part of the World Cup 2022 squad. In fact, he returned after a 2.5-year absence in March of 2024 and started one of their remaining 2 games and was on the bench for the other one. So just coming back into the team recently, Gerard Moreno, and we saw that in his start, he started as an central attacking midfielder there. Okay, let's summarize the position here. So in the World Cup, it was Asensio in 3 of the games, and Morata only for 1 game. That was game 3 against Japan, where we saw they made a lot of changes. However, it was Morata taking over after that, playing 9 of the 12 games since the World Cup, and Joselu starting when Morata was not. So very simple summary there. Most of the time it's Morata and Joselu when he's not there. Okay, that brings us to the end of our look at the players. And we'll finish here just in section 3 with some closing thoughts. So we saw a lot of candidates for each position. Some positions are fairly stable. And maybe I'll touch on that as we go through the review at the end here. It seems for Spain like continuity and consistency is sacrificed for giving all of these players some field time, or really that's the equation for them. I don't really have an opinion on that. It's a blessing to have so much talent, but it comes with the burden of making it work. So that's how they're making it work. So it did seem to cost them against Japan in game 3 of the World Cup. They made so many changes there, and Japan got the better of them. However, Spain does well in general, and they did win the Nations League, so perhaps their formula works. Okay, let's do a review then of the players, and we're not going to do a full review. We're just going to try to nominate who we think the starters will be. So new manager, Luis de la Fuente. We don't think he's going to change, or that's going to change before the tournament, so we'll call him a starter. Unai Simon, yes, we think he will be the starter. We also are quite confident David Raya will be the backup, but I have a wrong name in there. That should be Kepa Arrizabalaga here. I'll just highlight it in red. Kepa Arrizabalaga and Arrizabalaga and Alex Romero. I'm losing my lips. Both of those just possible candidates, and we think it'll just be 3 goalkeepers. So if that's the case, it'll be just one of them. In the central defense, Robin Lenormand and Aymeric Laporte, both French-born players, look like they are starters. It's not definite, but it looks quite promising. And for left back, we really don't know. We have a tough situation with Gaia and Balde, both injured. So it looks like Grimaldo will be the one. That's just speculation because he's only played 4 of the 12 games. So not sure what they're going to do as left back. So we can't nominate a starter there. On the right, it looks a bit more settled, and it looks like Danny Carvajal will be the starting right back. And Pedro Porro will be the backup since Jesus Navas is injured. We're going to summarize injuries in a second here. In the defensive midfield, no doubt about it, Rodri will be a starter. Who will be alongside of him kind of depends on the formation. And it could be any one of the central midfielders. Gavi, who we think will be a starter, not necessarily as a defensive midfielder, though, but somewhere on the field. Mikel Merino and Fabian Ruiz, not guaranteed starters, but we wouldn't be surprised to see them starting. We move all the way up to the left attack, and we do find the left attack particularly open, so we can't nominate a starter there. Mikel Oyarzabal, or if he's recovered, Danny Olmo, like in the cup, but it's really up in the air there. On the right side, it's also up in the air, but it does seem between Ferran Torres and Lamine Yamal. Lamine Yamal, an exciting newcomer, youngster, 17 years old. But again, we can't nominate a starter there. Among the left and right attacking players, Nico Williams seems to have a good chance of starting too, but we're not going to highlight anyone there. However, we can with the forwards because Alvaro Morata has been a consistent starter over the last period, so we can, with some confidence, highlight him. So there we have it, the players that we are confident are going to start. And let's move on to part 3. Let's move on to our last order of business, a review of the injuries. So we do have one player who is expected back. That's central defender David Garcia. He's expected back on June 23rd there. We have only one player who really we know to be out of contention. That's Jose Luis Gaia. He's out with a muscle injury and not due back until September 2024. He's a left back. And then we have a whole bunch of players with an unknown return date. So we'll have to update this in part 2 of the mediacast. These are well coded as a right midfielder, but currently playing as a right back, Jesus Navas. Left back, Alejandro Balde. Defensive midfielder, Martin Zupamendi, kind of Rodri's backup there. The versatile Gavi. So, yes, sorry, I should have said, if he's not injured, we think he will be a definite candidate, but there is an injury hanging over him. A definite starter, I should say. We have Oyhan Sanset, also an unknown return date. And finally, we have Jeremy Pinto, and both Gavi and Pino, not Pinto, both Gavi and Jeremy Pino haven't played for their clubs since their injury, and both of them, their injury has been since November 2023. So you think they might come back. However, the fact that they haven't played for their club and might lack fitness may be the bigger barrier at this point. Anyway, we will update as best we can in part 2, and let's finish by previewing part 2. But when we come back, we will know who was selected for the preliminary and final squads, and so we'll go through the list again and tell you any notable non-selections, any surprise inclusions, including new players, and we will update those injuries that we just looked at. All right, that brings us to the end of part one, our look at Spain, and we hope that was informative for you, and we'll see you back again for part two. We would like to thank Mike Tripak, Make Sound Music, and Pixabay for the wonderful background music called Dance 90s accompanying this mediacast.